What's up, everybody? Brothers, sisters, psychonauts, and seekers of truth. It is Ananka, and welcome to my bazaar. Today, I have an Oxycodone trip report for you. The title of this trip report is Dreaming of Emotions, and was submitted to Erowid in 2007 by the user Breathe. With all that being said, let our story begin. It was just another school day. My car was broken down in the shop, so I knew I would have nothing to do all night when I came walking out to the school bus. I had called a kid who can get oxys the night before, but he had failed to get them and never called me back. I went driving with a friend after the bus dropped me off home, and we smoked just over a gram of marijuana, which didn't have much effect on us since we were using papers. So when I got a call from the kid, around while I was still driving around with the friends smoking some joints, I was glad to hear that he was going to be able to meet up with the dealer he gets the oxys from later that day. We smoked the last of my weed driving around the back roads of a nearby town and started back. My friend wanted to go home, but on the way back to his house, we saw the kid walking up the street. We called him, and he asked us to pick him up and save him from the horrible winter temperatures, so we did, and we smoked some more weed on the way to get the oxys with him. By this time, I had just less than a dime left, and we got the oxy and dropped the kid off. For some reason, he had given me a blunt before he left, and I put it in my pocket. After dropping him off, my other friend had to go home. So we drove back to my house, and I said goodbye to him. I went into my house and watched some TV for an hour. I called someone else for a gram, and they said they would be right over. It took them quite a while, so I sawed up the oxy with a nail file, which took quite a while but made the oxy come off into a fine white powder just like I wanted. I put half the oxy in a small cup of orange juice and added some sugar to cover up the bitter taste. The rest of the Oxycontin I filed into a thin line. I drank the orange juice fast and then nailed the line, half up each nostril. But my nose was very dry, so I put some water in the cup and let some of it come down either nostril so that the oxy would come out down the back of my throat. It worked, and I could tell that nearly all of it came piling down my throat as the water hit the back of each nostril. I called the dealer because he was taking a long time, and sure enough, he had forgotten, and said he'd be at my house in 10 minutes. I put on the TV and my shoes, waiting. I began to feel flightly, and some itching began to annoy me around my face. Suddenly my eyes were heavy, and my body felt vibrant with sensation. Although parts of me felt heavier, I felt as if a weight had been lifted off my chest at the same time. I felt just slightly nauseous, and I walked outside into the frigid cold to wait for the dealer. It felt wonderful to stand outside, with the contrast between hot and cold, adding to the buzzing sensation going through my whole body and my brain. Purple and blue streaks seemed to disrupt my visual sense as I began to zone out and stare at the sky. My eyes had trouble staying open sometimes, and it gave the sensation that I was dreaming while still awake. The dealer pulled up and was shocked that I was standing outside in the 10-degree temperatures waiting. I told him that I was on oxy, and he laughed, gave me the gram, and left. I had trouble navigating through the snowy driveway on the way back into the house, and my heartbeat was slowing significantly. My heart still felt overworked as I went back into the house. I went upstairs and pulled out the blunt. I began cutting it with the hook on the end of my nail file. It was a foolish move and caused the cut on the blunt to be way too rigid and wide. It took me 20 minutes to break up all the weed and put it into the huge Philly blunt. And then I realized what a terrible blunt it really was, and it broke into 2 pieces somewhere around the middle when I was finished. In my dreamlike state, It took me another 10 minutes to fix these two sections up, and after sealing them, I was satisfied. By now, I felt extremely tired, and my eyes were in a constant struggle to stay open. But I went into the bathroom and lit up the blunt regardless. I got some large hits off of the blunt at first, even though my breath was shortened by the Oxycontin, and I was already dizzy and extremely disoriented. When I was finished, I began to feel extremely altered by the weed, and had trouble standing up as my eyes became even more torn apart. My brother, who I never involve in any of my drug use, was standing at the bathroom door and wanted to use the bathroom. I panicked. How could I get out of this one? I could not let him into the bathroom full of smoke and smelling like a marijuana greenhouse. I spied the mop in the corner, which was left from the toilet overflow that had occurred the day before. I flushed the toilet after throwing the blunt in, then snatched the mop and got it extremely wet, wetting the rug and all of the floor with toilet water. I convinced my brother that the toilet had overflowed again and told him not to enter the room. He looked a little suspicious, but my plan worked and he didn't push it any further. Confident about my trick, I went into my room and lay down for a minute. The weed hit me so hard that I felt like I was spinning everywhere. My eyes began rolling in random directions as I zoned out, unable to comprehend the television I was trying to watch for minutes at a time, as the Oxycontin took my breath away and gave the illusion that I was being pulled down into the bed, being sucked into the sheets. I felt huge waves of euphoria, and my whole body was buzzing warmly. I got up to pee once and had a difficult time walking, since I felt like I was being pulled sideways into the carpet. I slid to the ground against a pillow that was laying there, and I nearly passed out from exhaustion. I zoned out, and my eyes moved out in a blur. As I was barely able to see the television screen, I was thrown into a dreamlike state where I didn't have a care in the world, and my brain felt like it was being completely microwaved as I lay there for nearly 25 minutes. Finally, I got up as the high began to lower its pressure some, and I was able to make it into the bathroom and get some water. For a moment, this made me nauseous, but after some rehydration, I was ready for the other part of the blunt. This part was different in that it had a lot of tobacco left still near the cigar hole. I smoked it quickly near my window and began to run out of weed and into some of the tobacco. After only a few hits of the little bit of weed that was left and the tobacco that was burning behind it, I felt what can only be described as what felt like a change of pressure in my brain as the nicotine shook me and blurred my vision harshly. I had to put out the blunt as I was hit with one of the strongest rushes of the night, as the nicotine struggled to speed up my slow heartbeat and my breathing became shallow. I tore my clothes off and lay in bed, shutting off the television and thinking. I felt like I was falling constantly through space in my head as my eyes rolled and I fell back into a hallucination-like state. I was seeing colors again and my head was buzzing so harshly that I felt unable to think or concentrate in the least bit as a rush of euphoria shook through my whole body. The nicotine had harshly added to my high, along with the weed as I lay with half-open eyes, hallucinating and seeing shapes and tracers. Sometime around then is when things got weird. I was hit with an out-of-this-world empty emotion and feelings of worthlessness. I was struck with feelings of guilt for the way I treated some people in the past and regret for my decisions. I felt an almost suicidal rage, and I became very depressed. I didn't feel sorry for myself, but more for my family as I lay there thinking. I didn't fall asleep for another 2 hours, as I zoned out completely, and the emotional state was soon gone, but not forgotten. When I woke up the next morning, I didn't remember much, and I was too depressed to attempt going to school. Besides that, I could tell that I should not eat anything, as I felt somewhat nauseous and needed some water. I still felt depressed and ill as I lay there and wanted nothing to do but fall asleep and get away from myself again. The odd thing is, despite the sad emotions that came from this experience, I felt an extremely strong desire to repeat it, as I was attracted to the non-violent state of euphoria that I experienced. Looking back, I believe that the Oxys were a unique, revealing experience. They helped unlock an emotion I had been trying to avoid for a long time, and made me realize how depressed I really am. The beginning euphoria was also nice, and I still do plan to do it again, even though I felt the same loss of self-esteem last time. This was the 4th time I have done Oxycodone. I've never had a quote-unquote bad experience on it before, although it does make me a little nauseous and takes away my appetite. I've also abused codeine, hydrocodone, tramadol, and Valium. Therefore, I have a reasonable tolerance to opiates, and a good resistance to any nausea or constipation or trouble urinating that those drugs can cause. Alright everyone, that is the end of our story. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to like, share, subscribe. Share with us your Oxycontin experiences down in the comments below. With all that being said, I will see you guys in the next one. Deuces.